Okay, we're continuing with this book from the Holy Grail of Wisdom quotes. We're still on the letter A. We're just finishing up the letter A. Next, we're going to talk about Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome. He's called the last of the good emperors. His son later became the Emperor Commodus, probably his adopted son, really. And Commodus was a jerk. And you'll see him in the movie, The Gladiator. It's a great movie with Russell Crowe. Anyways, also, there's a great philosopher, probably the greatest philosophy teacher of the modern era is Michael Sugru. And he has a lot of lectures on his channels. If you go to Michael Sugru channel, you'll see the best philosophy lectures. But anyways, just talking about Marcus Aurelius. But first of all, Sugru describes the 4 post-Socratic Hellenistic philosophies. This means from the Greek schools. Okay, and the first was Epicureanism, which is sort of hedonism, enjoy the moment. Skepticism is a cynical way, but in a reasonable way to be cynical. Cynical itself means overly negative, like Diogenes. You know, he was a homeless philosopher, the guy living in the street. Stoicism is a rejection of hedonic pleasure. And what it basically says is only focus on what you can control and everything else, you just accept it. A Stoic was an honorable philosopher who wants to live up to his potential. And that can be good to make you mentally tough. Marcus Aurelius is sort of the prototype of the great Stoic. He was emperor for 19 years, a long time. And he had good self-control. He didn't take advantage of his power like many other emperors had done. He kept a journal for himself, which became his Meditations, a very famous book about Stoicism. So let me get, there's one great quote from Aurelius that has had a big effect on my life. Okay, so here's a couple Aurelius quotes. A man's true delight is to do the things he was made for. And that's actually a major philosophy of happiness that I agree with. What it basically says, you know, and James Watson, the co-discoverer of DNA structure, said, basically an animal's happy when it does what it's meant to do. A horse is happy when it runs. So basically, you first of all have to think about what is, you know, the best purpose for your life. What's the best way you could spend your time? And it's going to depend on your goals. You know, for if you're a mother, the best thing might be to help raise your children. If you're a coach, the best thing might be to be a good coach. So for everybody, it just depends on what their main goal or purpose is. And when they're doing what they feel they were meant to do, that makes them happy. Okay, I sort of see it as my goal to be sort of an educator and sort of a scientist, physician type. And so when I do those things, I'm happy. Because I can tell you, my friends, my wife, she's like, why do I make this stupid YouTube channel that I don't make any money with when I could be out moonlighting making lots of money? I already make plenty of money with my regular job. And it's because I like this. I feel this is useful. I actually feel this is more useful than my job, even though my job pays real money. Whereas this, I don't get any money. This is kind of just a hobby. But my wife don't mind so much because at least I'm not wasting money. You know, I'm just sitting here making these videos. All right, but be that as it may, when you feel like you are fulfilling your purpose, your destiny, or whatever is in life, your meaning in life, you're happier. And that's something you can control, where you put your time, versus you can't control a lot of other things. Okay, Marcus Aurelius continues. Decide to be extraordinary. Yeah, well, whatever it is, try to be good at whatever you care about. If you want to be a writer, then write. Do what you need to do and do it now. Epictetus is another famous Stoic. He was actually a slave, though, a Greek slave. We'll come back to him later, but just one quote by Epictetus. Throw me to the wolves, and I will return leading the pack. Marcus Aurelius had a beard, which was characteristic of imitating the Greek philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, rather than a clean-shaven face like a lot of the Roman aristocrats, Julius Caesar, Augustus Caesar. Okay, here's my favorite quote from Marcus Aurelius, and this is the one I say to myself a lot, because in medicine, what it's like to actually be a doctor is there's a lot of pressure on you. Go fast, go fast, go faster. And there's very often simultaneously 2 problems happening. And you have to take care of them both. And you just have to keep your cool, take care of one first, then take care of the other. You can't take care of them both at the same time. And so the quote, and I got this also from my notice at emergency room doctors. I would sometimes have to rotate through the emergency room. And the really good emergency room doctors are very nice, very cool. They don't get emotionally, like their emotional range is really narrow. They deal with one emergency patient, then they have to walk into the next room and deal with the next patient. And what one of them said to me one time is, I can't be emotional because I can't get emotionally involved in these patients and their care. Because if I did, I would be too distracted. I wouldn't be able to move to the next room 5 minutes later and have to deal with another disaster. So here's a quote by Marcus Aurelius. A man should be like a rocky cliff, against which the waves break. but the cliff stands firm. So all day long, there's going to be BS, there's going to be problems, and you just say, I shall complete all the work that I need to do, no matter what BS happens, no matter how stupid or obnoxious the other person is. I will be polite and thoughtful, and I'll just get the work done. Okay, and it kind of reminds me of an anonymous quote. I don't know who's the author of this, but he said, a soldier fights best when he knows he's already dead. And so what it means basically is you're screwed for the day. You have to be at work. You have to work your tail off all day long. There's no point getting upset if somebody's rude to you or annoyed if somebody's just, tedious and stupid and wasting a lot of your time. You just do what you have to do to make sure you take care of your patients as best you can. You generate your billing codes that you're required to do. And that's it. And so what I'm trying to say is, if you're young and you're inexperienced and you work in a hospital environment, you'll often be pissed off. Like a lot of young doctors are pissed off. They're like, this person's dumping work on me. This person's screwing up what I'm supposed to do. They'll complain a lot. And that's actually a popular thing like amongst residents is to complain and bitch a lot. And that's actually some bitching, kibitzing at work. That's normal, okay? But what I'm also going to say is if you want to become like sort of a high-level professional, you just have to keep it cool and deal with BS after BS after BS, stupidity after stupidity, obnoxious screw-up after obnoxious screw-up. And what you learn to do is you anticipate them. For example, if I was doing a complex surgery, I would know in advance there might be a problem ordering the surgical equipment, that I might need to get an extra talented technologist to help me. And so I would find those people in advance because I know that if I don't get everything together before the case, I'll be screwed. So I would just, you might have had one screw up the first time. Okay, you didn't have the equipment, you didn't have the personnel you needed to do the procedure, but you won't let that happen the second time. Next time you'll have the personnel available and the equipment, and you just have to keep your cool. That's a very valuable quote. A man should be like a rocky cliff against which the waves break all day, but the cliff is not moved. I like the cliff is not moved rather than stands firm. Very little is needed to live a happy life. Yeah, that's another thing too. You don't need much, okay? It's like I don't spend almost any money except buying books. My family spends all my money. And so, but I'm happy. Like I told you, my kid says to me, he goes, Dad, why are you so happy? He says, your life sucks. Out of everybody in the whole family, you have the worst life out of anyone, but you're the happiest. Why is that? And I'm like, well, because I know who I am. I know what I am. I'm a scholar, and I like being a scholar, and this is what I do with my hobby. So I like it. Whereas a lot of these other people, they can't make up what they might want to do. They're frustrated and stuff. Versus I know exactly who I am, exactly what I want to do, and I try to do it. And I got setbacks and problems. Everybody does. But I like myself because I know I really do what I'm supposed to do as best I can, what I really want to do, to the extent that I can within my context. There's no mystery or confusion about it. Okay, Marcus Aurelius continues. Look beneath the surface. Do not let multiple qualities of a thing nor its value escape you. The true worth of a man is to be measured by the objects he pursues. Most of what we say and do is not necessary, and its omission would save both time and trouble. At every step, therefore, a man should ask himself, is this one of the things that are superfluous? Yeah, so you don't waste time. Anyways, that's Marcus Aurelius. Next, we're going to do Jane Austen. That'll be our two people for today. And the reason why I like doing this is all a word processing file that I have, is you remember the great authors, philosophers, thinkers, historical characters by a couple of their quotes. This is how I remember everything. I dial into these people. Okay, next is Jane Austen. She's the famous English writer of Pride and Prejudice, Persuasion, and Emma. She was a country girl, the daughter of a clergyman. She lived from 1775 to 1817. Not that long of a life. She was the sixth child of 7. She had a boyfriend in her early 20s, and she did get a marriage proposal at 27 years of age, which she rejected, and she never got another marriage proposal, so she was a spinster. And they say that's a common thing. Writers often write about what they wish had happened in their own life, or about their own personal experience in some way, and some even joke it's the photographic negative of their own life. She's always writing about marriages, and she herself never got married, kind of sad. She's good at writing about bantering and bickering couples. This Spurgeon guy wrote all about her. I read some of his work about her that was good. In her time, a gentleman was somebody who didn't have to work. He had an inheritance or land or something. The money just came into him almost like royalties. The family inheritance went to the sons. So the daughters were a financial issue, and they had to sort of like find somebody to marry them that would support them. So there's a lot of these books in this time. It's all about how can we find a good match for the girl. And there was no birth control in those days. And if a man made a woman pregnant and he didn't marry her, then she was in major financial difficulty and might never, of course, find another husband. So it was a big deal. Her novels, and compared to the other novels, there was a lot of thinking on the part of the character, so they were sort of intellectually sophisticated in that way compared to a lot of the other stuff. Because if you read a lot of these old ancient novels, the King Arthur stuff, they're just sort of the character doing things, but there's not a lot of thinking. There's not a lot of interiority, if you will, like Schopenhauer described. The character's thinking and making decisions, which is a lot of times the best part of a book. It's been described, her books, as being like musical chairs of country life, trying to find a husband, and they're trying to get all the best husbands before they disappear, and trying to auction themselves off to the highest bidder. But they had a sense of community. There would be these big parties and balls, and you'd meet, men and women would meet each other and decide if they liked each other, and that's a good thing. Nowadays in modern society, there's like no community because the church is kind of really weak, and everything else in society is kind of falling apart. So you don't meet people. And you can meet people online, but meeting people online is a pain in the butt. It's not all that one would want it to be. Okay, next Jane Austen quote. "It is such a happiness when good people get together." Yes, it is, and it's nice. And my mom used to be great about that. She'd have all these big parties at our house every year, a whole bunch of big parties. And all these people would come over, and it was very pleasant. It made my father very happy to see all his friends. Because socially, men are not as social as women in general. He would never call anybody. My mom invited all his friends over. And I wish my wife had done that and made us more social, but we're not. Jane Austen continues. And that's because my mom didn't work. When a woman doesn't work, she's got more time to plan all the social stuff. When a woman works, she's always tired, a lot of times grouchy. Okay, Jane Austen continues. "Self-knowledge is the first step to maturity." Yeah, you have to understand yourself, be able to step out of your life, if you will, and look at it from an external perspective to the extent you can in order to understand things. Because anybody can look back on their life when they're older and say, gosh, I would have done so many things different. I wasted so much time. I did so much stupid stuff because I didn't know any better. Okay, Jane Austen, "What is right to be done cannot be done too soon." Yeah, somebody needs a kind word. Do it sooner rather than later, because sometimes they just deteriorate. And if you'd got to them earlier, you might have been able to help them more. "Angry people are not always wise." Yeah, a lot of people, when they're pissed off, they drop into that mammalian limbic system mind rather than the cerebral cortex human mind, and they do impulsive, badly behaved things that they regret. Okay, Jane Austen continues. "Only a novel? Oh, it's only a novel, only some work in which the most thorough knowledge of human nature, the happiest delineation of its varieties, the liveliest effusions of wit and humor are conveyed to the world in the best chosen language? How could you not love novels?" She continues, "The person, be it gentleman or lady, who has not pleasure in a good novel must be intolerably stupid." Okay. And then she's talking about Miss Bennet. "Miss Bennet was a woman of mean understanding, little information, and uncertain temper." That's a big cut down in her world. "History, real, solemn history, I cannot be interested in it. I read a little as a duty, but it tells me nothing that does not either vex me or weary me. The quarrels of popes and kings with wars and pestilence in every page. The men so good for nothing and hardly any women at all." Jane Austen writing in Thoughts on the Business of Life. And that's very reminiscent of Scarlett O'Hara when she talked. She could care less about history of the war. She just wanted to know who was going to be her future husband. Jane Austen continues, "My idea of good company, Mr. Eliot, is the company of clever, well-informed people who have a great deal of conversation. That is what I call good company." "You are mistaken," he said gently. "That is not good company. That is the best company." Okay, Jane Austen from Pride and Prejudice. Loss of virtue in a female is irretrievable. One false step involves her in endless ruin. Yeah, she got pregnant and didn't have a husband, and that was a disaster back in those days. There was no welfare to foot the paycheck, and then other men would be, not too interested in the baby mama without a hubby and without, any money. Okay, Jane Austen from the beginning of Pride and Prejudice. "It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. She was a woman of..." Okay, so anyways, sort of like where a large income is one of the best recipes for happiness I've ever heard of. So, back in those days, you're worried about poverty, you're worried about finding a husband, and I think, she writes about females, but I don't really find her books that useful because it was back in this, 1700s, 1800s. Whereas I found, Gone with the Wind much more useful, the insight into how a female thinks. But, Jane Austen was pretty popular. I wouldn't put her in one of the all-time great writers, but she was certainly good and pleasant. So anyways, that's it we're done with the letter A. We'll start on the letter B next